I think we can start with the second part of our seminar. I hope you had your coffee. Okay, I think it's time to go a little bit deeper in the project first outputs. The main one is the project web platform, and thanks to Karen Ross, a professor from Newcastle University and project leader, and Claudia Padovani, associate professor from University of Padova, we will discover all the contents and functionalities of this web platform. And thanks to Aude as well, we will we will have some testimonials about the concrete action which has been organized by the project, because it's good to know about initiatives and recommendation and etc. But now it's time to be concrete. So I would like to give the floor to Claudia or Karen. You will start to introduce the project, of course, and in particular our web platform.
Thank you, Eleanor. And also just to say again that Eleanor and Pamela and Sarah are also involved in the platform, and we'll see something of that work. Also, just to say that because this is a European Commissioned funded project, they're very keen on making sure that they've got value for money. So on the table at the end, at the back there, is a questionnaire. So if you could just, it would take you 5 minutes at the end of it just to fill in that questionnaire. That will be so super helpful. Obviously helpful if you say nice things. But also helpful if you know, we're also open to constructive criticism. So, but having said that, as I said at the very beginning, this is where we're launching the platform because we actually have something to show you, but it is a work in progress. It isn't finished, but there are a number of elements on there which are finished, which, you know, at some point tomorrow, next week, next month, you can actually go on there and hopefully, as I said, find something of interest and use, and progressively find more things of interest and use as the project develops. So we're going to do a bit of a kind of double act here, myself and Claudia. We together we've worked quite a lot on the platform, so we're just going to flip between us, as you will see, and hopefully it won't be too disjointed. Okay, this is who we are. This is the panel. So Claudia, myself, and Aude Stenner. And Aude will introduce herself at an appropriate point, but we're just very pleased. You'll see why Aude is here. Apart from being a jolly nice person, she actually has a very particular function on this panel, and she will describe what that function is a bit later. But thank you, Aude. So, when we were thinking about developing this project, when we got the funding on that happy day, having tried several times to get the project funded, we were thinking about who is the audience for AGEMI. And because the consortium comprises both academics and media professionals, we recognised that what we wanted to produce was a platform or a set of resources which would be helpful for lots of people. But as I said at the beginning, our kind of key issue is about building bridges, and primarily building the bridge between education and employment, building a bridge between journalism media students and the media and journalism profession, so that when our students graduate, they come into a context where they kind of understand what's going on. And hopefully, if they come in more gender aware, that's the generation that's going to change things. So for us, it's very much about trying to kind of show that relationship between education and employment. So our primary target, in many ways, are students, both our own students in the consortium, but also students generally, because the purpose, what we want to happen is when all the resources are up there, they're all accessible, they're just free. They're free to download. They're free for anyone, any of you in this room, anywhere in the world to go on the platform, download anything of interest, incorporate it in people's, their own training activities. So when we're thinking about the audience, we were thinking about, okay, so we can see how our students would be interested in this, because we're going to force them to take a module on gender and media. We're going to force awareness on our students. So we can imagine students might take this as a whole course, because part of what we're doing in terms of the online resources is producing a module which students could take as a course. But those resources, the different resources which we'll show you in a second, can also be accessed. So you're a busy journalist and a story breaks, yet another story breaks around harassment of women journalists. You can go onto the website and you can then put in some keyword searches and you can then find something that we have produced around that topic, or a set of resources which you can access on that topic, or some women journalists talking about the experience of gender-based violence. So we're imagining these different kinds of audiences. The key thing is you've got to know that the platform exists. That's one. So that's a kind of key issue for us, how we extend knowledge about the platform so it actually does, it has traction and it gets used. So we're imagining students, we're imagining media professionals going on, finding out, okay, so your media organisation wants to set up a training resource or a training course for women leaders. Well, if you go on the platform, you could put in some keyword searches and you could find other examples from other media organisations who have done that. So it's very much about good practices, about sharing good practices. But we also, as we saw from the earlier session, we're hoping to be able to provide something of interest to Cecile in the Council of Europe, or Michaela as an MEP, so that, I can't resist saying this. What was really interesting, I think, about what Michaela was talking about when she was talking about ideology and saying how she didn't really want to, she didn't believe in ideology, but then she then proceeded to talk about all the things which are the tenets of feminism, which, anyway, that's a slide aside. So we're just thinking these three kinds of user: students, kind of media professionals, and basically everyone else, NGOs, women's organisations, people who might have any passing or concerted interest in the kind of gender equality agenda. Okay, so what we've done so far. So we've created a website which hopefully, as long as the technology doesn't let us down, we will kind of show you what the website looks like. We've designed a resources bank of good practices, which is something that Claudia has been spending. She's actually much younger than she looks, because she has spent so much time developing the resources bank of good practices. Yet
it was a demanding task.
But Claudia and her team at the University of Padua have just been so brilliant at actually constructing both the web platform but also the resources bank of good practices. And I think hopefully we'll see the fruits of your endeavours. It's not completed yet, but that is something we've been doing. We've developed the GMAP, which is, again, as Claudia will show you, is a global map of organisations which are doing good things. And any of your organisations, we will be like, if you're doing good things, let us know, because we'll put your organisation up on the GMAP. We've developed some of the learning resources. So as I said, what we're constructing is a 10-unit course, each unit being on a different topic. So we've developed 5 of them. We've completed 5 of them. We've got 3 which are almost completed and 2 in development. So 5 are on the platform now. You can look at them, you can download them, they're finished, and then the others are in various states of completion. But they will all be completed by the time the project, unfortunately, finishes its funding at the end of July. We've designed, yes, the ACT app. ACT is Assess, Challenge and Transform. Yes, it's 9 themes and 1 introduction, just for Pamela's tweeting purposes. So we've developed an app which at some point in the next month or two will be available on the App Store and on the iPhone store and in the Android store, but not quite ready yet. But it's almost ready, and we can show you a mock-up of what it will look like when it's done. We've done a number of interviews. The other thing again that Claudia will talk about is we've interviewed a number of media professionals about their experiences in those different themes, which we will show you in a second. So media professionals who are talking about issues around violence, around representation, around advocacy, around kind of policy making, so that when you see the online learning resources, some of it is just us talking directly to camera as a mini lecture, but then that's interspersed with other interviews with other people who are working in the field and with other things, tasks and things like that. We road tested some of those materials at a summer school, which was in August in Gothenburg, which was a week, had 30 students involved, 10 from each of the 3 universities, and they got together, and this is why Aude is here, because she was one of those students, to do various things, which she will kind of talk about. And we're also now, at this point in February, we're almost at the end of the internship program. So all the students who took part in the summer school are also now they've completed or are completing, like Aude, their internships. So again, this was part of this idea of trying to make that bridge between education and employment by giving students an opportunity to work in a media organisation or an organisation that has a media element, for example, European Women's Lobby. So, and then so as part of our effort at sustainability, because when the project finishes in July this year, that's it. We've built something, we've developed something. We think it's very worthwhile and meaningful, but we need to kind of find a way to enable it to continue to have some existence other than just being a static website. So part of what we're doing there is working with other organisations, thinking about how to package some of the materials in different ways for different audiences, so that we kind of leverage a bit more activity and reach of the resources.
Now we try, if the connection is good enough, then it will be time to have a look at this platform, which is this, that I hope you can see. So we're just going to provide a few information, give you a sense of what the platform looked like, so that you have a basic instruction on how to navigate, and then you can go back and spend more time, but at least to give a sense of what we've been doing and why we have conceived this project as it is. So of course, AGEMI, the logo and homepage is just giving you a short introduction to the project. Karen is also speaking a couple of minutes to say what the project is about, as she did today. And then we have 4 main blocks of activities that characterize the project. We'll be looking at in some details at some of this. And the first one is actually the database of good practices. I would say when we started designing this project, this was the very first thing we had in mind, because the call from the European Commission was actually to develop something that had to do with dissemination of good practices. Now, something that we should say is that Karen, myself, Elena Chiaberge, Pamela, and also Maria Edstrom, we all were coming from not only long years working on issues related to gender and media, but we're all involved in other networks, in international networks across Europe and beyond. And so we thought, there are so many interesting things happening in different places that certainly that we thought it would have been certainly an added value, the possibility to bring some of those good practices together, and therefore we conceived this as a hub. And then, because of the concept that Karen was sharing with you, that we tried to bridge with the professional world and to look outside the academia and try to adopt also a different language, which is not just the theoretical and methodological aspect, then we thought, beside the good practices, a number of other elements would come in. So just to give you a sense of what this resource, we call it Resources Bank, it's actually a database. And if you go to like good practices, there is one page that describes a bit what this is. The one thing that we think is relevant is that we're not only collecting good practices from Europe, from European countries, because we thought from the very beginning that actually in many cases we can learn from amazing practices that are being developed from Latin America to the Northern African countries, thanks to our network. And so the data set started out from the very beginning as a global resource. And at the same time, we thought, this whole project should make sense not only to people who are working in Europe, teaching in Europe, or operating as media professionals in Europe. So this kind of global approach is there. And then, of course, as we were collecting different good practices, we had to create some kind of a template and a framework for us to understand what do we mean by good practices and what kind of good practices we wanted to have in there. And so there's a little elaboration on this, whereby good practices, they go from monitoring projects that were mentioned even in the previous session, to awareness-raising activities, campaigns, educational and training, gender equality policies and codes. So many of the specific initiatives that were mentioned by the previous speakers, we do think they can be good practices worth to be shared and known. And then on the other side, because of the intersectional kind of approach that was mentioned also before, we try to identify all the different forms of inequality that may relate to gender issues and challenges in the media and through the media. And thereby we have, of course, issues we understand, and we have included issues of representation, stereotype, portrayal, but also the working condition, the gender pay gaps, access to decision making, the role that technology is having in transforming the profession. So there are a number of issues there. Now, the way you can visualize this resources bank, and as Karen says, we've been working on this, of course, for some time, but now it's like halfway, and of course we would like a lot more good examples to be included in there. You can visualize in 3 different manners. The one that we believe is kind of more intriguing is this, as a bubble search, whereby you identify, you have filters there, and so you can search for type of good practice in relation to the type of inequality issue that is addressed. And so in the bubbles here, you have, for instance, independent monitoring. Okay, so in this case, what you visualize are bubbles that are the type of good practice. Or you can have awareness-raising initiative. So if you click here and you're dealing with awareness-raising initiative, these initiatives may actually address different type of issues. So harassment and abuse, for instance, that was widely mentioned before, right? So here we have collected a few examples of campaigns and awareness-raising initiative that tackle specifically the issue of harassment and violence and abuse. And if you do click on any of these, like the Everyday Sexism Project, for instance, you're taken to a page which is the profile of the specific initiative, whereby you have basic information. You have the link to the actual website, you have a short description of the good practice, you know more or less where it is based, who is the organization that's promoting this, okay? So that's the idea that by doing this, or vice versa, you can also change how you want to filter this. And in this case, you are entering the data set thinking, what kind of issue am I concerned with? And then you go and look for the type of good practice. So that requires a little bit of navigation to see if. But what we think is interesting in this case is that if you have an issue of interest, or if you're interested in a very specific type of good practice, like monitoring activities, for instance, you may discover things that you're not familiar, that you're not aware of, and they may provide some inspiration or ideas or model for you to do something else, right? The other way in which you can actually search this is also through a more traditional kind of semantic search, whereby you have the whole list of good practices, and in this case you would just be inputting some key terms in here, considering that the whole semantic search is built on the text of the description for every good practice. So if I'm interested in decision making, for instance, I would get, no, great. interested in decision making, I would just get suggestion on the kind of good practices that we have included that tackle that type of issue, or if we're interested in campaign, or if we're interested in codes of conduct, right? So this is just to give a sense, and of course you need to navigate. Something that is very, very relevant for us is the fact that through these good practices, half of these good practices we have collected ourselves, building on previously existing resources, like for instance the Council of Europe handbook that was just mentioned before. So in a few cases there were some available collections, and then in other cases we have invited people from all over the world to actually contribute by filling in a Google form, which is available online. I'm just pointing you to this because this is actually a call for collaboration that we're issuing here as well. The Google form is in Spanish, French, and English, and we translated that so that we could actually have inputs from many different places. It worked as a form of collaboration, not just to enrich the resources bank, but also to strengthen some of the networks for collaboration that Karen was mentioning before, and I might come back to some of this afterwards. So as far as the collection of good practices, we think this is an ongoing project. Many of the things that were mentioned before, including, and I was just talking to Victoria first, that some of the good practices identified by the national regulators, they would certainly be very interesting to be placed in here. But also, I guess many of you, you're working for organizations that do have initiative that you may want to share. And of course, you can just go on the Google form, fill that in, and these will appear. So what we're doing now, we're going for another call for collaboration that will extend until the end of April. And then, of course, we need to collect all this, revise, and publish before the project is over. So there's like 2 months for this. The other action, which is important, and Karen will speak to this, is the set of learning resources. Here is just to show you what the page looks like. It's a set of learning resources, as we said, with 9 key themes from gender representation and the news to advocacy, which is done. And in the middle, as I said, you have journalism cultures, issues of leadership, abusive aspects of this. And the learning resources, they can be used, as Karen was saying, by educators in university settings or by trainers in professional settings. They're actually all available, accessible just for interested citizens and interested people. I think to access them, sorry, we need to go to, yes, but I'm just going through you need to be signed in. So you're expected to sign in, but this is like a very easy process. And once you are signed in, then you can access.
It doesn't cost you anything to sign in. It's completely free. Completely free.
Okay. And in this case, you have the whole series. So apart from the introduction, each unit is a thematic unit, and it's organized whereby you have a set of video lectures on different aspects of that specific topic, like in this case, issue and gender and representation. Then you have some reading material, mostly relevant for us working in academia and university, but then you also have some other relevant resources, links to external resources, and of course you have the links to all interviews that have been conducted with experts and professionals on the specific topic. On the units, you may want to say something else?
I mean, maybe just, probably if we just look at the first unit, and the introduction to the first unit, just so you can see what it kind of looks like.
Maybe this is
Yeah.
more complete.
Yeah. So ignore the stuff on the because we have to sign in as well.
This is as administrator. You have a different visualization, but this is basically what you have.
Yes, this looks a bit messy, but when you actually go, when any of you go in there, it will look a little bit more streamlined, but it looks a bit messy at the moment.
So you have different segments for each topic. So each topic is actually split in different aspects so that you have video lectures that are not too long. Apart from my case, I take responsibility. I talk about policy. Policy kind of drives me through using more time. Then you have video lectures, which are sitting on YouTube, so you can both access from the website or from the YouTube AGEMI project channel. And then you have the GEM talks are all these interviews that have been made. So that may be, you know, if you're running a training, you could use the interview as an icebreaker and then have a discussion, a conversation, any other kind of activity in that sense. Or if you are, as Karen was saying, just interested in a topic because you need to write an article, maybe you want to hear what other people have said about this.
And it is important to highlight, I think, that all the units will be subtitled in different languages.
And we can show you that on unit.
So to make...
So shall I enter?
Yeah.
Just to show?
Yeah.
The first video?
Yeah. Or if you click on the actual page link, and then scroll down, and it's the second big.
Yeah, it's still charging.
Oh. Yeah, it's this one. Yeah, that's the one that works. And you can see whether it's subtitled in French, which you should be able to.
If audio is okay.
Hello, I'm Karen Ross, and I'll be your guide through this unit on gender representation in the news. I'll start by providing a brief overview of the topic.
Claudia, if you just stop it and put the other subtitles on.
From here?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would apologize, but the connection here, we're working with the phone as a hub.
Yeah.
So, of course, it can't be as it's supposed to be.
But in the subtitle option, you will have the opportunity to choose different languages. Yeah.
So, in the end, every video lecture, every interview will be subtitled in the 3 languages.
The ways in which women and men have been represented in the news
Sound is
discourse
also not
has
good
been a
enough.
topic of considerable research
the sound is
interest
terrible.
since at least the 1970s.
Because we got the idea.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we that's not. Can I just use yours? So one of the things that we absolutely did want to do from the very beginning is to make the materials accessible in at least 3 languages. Originally, it was going to be the 3 languages of the project, which was Italian, English, and Swedish. But we very quickly realised that that probably wasn't very sensible in terms of access. So we then decided that, okay, what would be more sensible would be English, French, and Spanish to have a wider reach. So we've been working with a subtitling company to subtitle all the video lectures. So all the lectures are, once they've all been completed, will be subtitled in those 3 languages. But what we didn't realise is, until the summer school, is how important it was even for the English language films to also be subtitled in English. And I just didn't think about that as someone who has English as their first language. But actually it does make a difference. And we hadn't really thought about that. So fortunately we do actually have the budget to do that. So that's actually, it is something that we have done. And we also are now thinking if we can use a bit of a different part of the budget to subtitle the films, the GEM talks, because a number of those are in languages other than English. But it would be really helpful if all the moving image material was actually subtitled and therefore more accessible. As Claudia said, the Google form is in English, French and Spanish, so that a number of the good practice examples are in those multiple languages. So again, we're trying to make it more accessible, beyond the English-speaking world.
Few final things about the platform, and then of course you're welcome to just explore and see how it works. The news is about events, so where AGEMI has been presented, discussed, and of course today's event is included in this list. We're working on a press kit, so in the end there will be not only, well, you have a press release for today's event, but actually like a short presentation for the project and a how-to guide on how to navigate and use this platform, and then a few extras that have come about as ideas as we were talking and working on this. So the GEM talks are these interviews. This is another way you can access the interviews with experts and professionals. The GEM glossary is a way of explaining how the project is using specific terms. So how do we understand gender equality, gender mainstreaming, patriarchy, and sexism in order to be more transparent about the choices that have been made. Change session is actually a section where we would like to host all sorts of good examples of gender equal and gender inclusive journalism. So we're not actually collecting examples that have been produced by others, but if you have written a very good story, if you are running, I mean, the good practices are more initiatives, but in this case, we're talking about good examples of gender fair journalism. So we would very much like to include links to existing examples from different places. And then finally, the GEM map. Now, the map includes as a working process, both the good practices and a number of organizations. Visualization, for now, it's not very satisfying, but it will come. It comes up at some point. Basically, we have 180, more or less, between organizations and good practices. So the good practices that sit in the database, they appear in orange on the map, whereas the organization appear in purple. And of course, we see that there is a lot more across Europe, and you don't really get the sense of 180, but this is because we're working on how to link the database with the visuals. So this will be improved, but the idea is also that we can visualize not only where the good practices are, but where we have not yet collected existing good practices that we would like to show. And so certainly it's not a void space, but it's a space that we would like to be able to fill in. So as for the platform, I think that's where we are.
So, as Claudia said, we've got a YouTube channel because it was actually more sensible to host all the video materials on YouTube than actually on our own platform. It just made more sense. It also means that although we've actually got specific subtitling for English, French and Spanish, it means because it's on YouTube, any other language, there are 190 languages on YouTube, which you could all decide to actually include in terms of just clicking on that. So we just thought it would be more accessible to actually have those materials on YouTube. However, if you go on to the AGEMI YouTube channel, it is completely chaotic. So I wouldn't be advising you, I mean, you can go on there to have a look at things, but it doesn't actually work as a structure at the moment because we haven't quite spent enough time on playlists. We don't actually know how to do that yet. We're developing our YouTube skills.
We're working with experts that have been helping, supporting us in creating this. So don't trust her too much. You can go, you find lots of interesting things.
Yes, but we are doing things ourselves.
With the summer school.
We have road tested with the summer school. And so this is why Ord is here to tell us something about her experiences. So this is Ord Stanner. She's going to talk to us about being at the summer school and also doing something around the internships. So over to you, Ord. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Karen. I have a bachelor in communication, but I'm now doing a master's degree in gender studies in France. But I spent an Erasmus semester in Padova, Italy, where I met Claudia Padovani, who kindly invited me and two other French colleagues to be a part of the AGEMI program, including a summer school in Sweden and a one-week internship in an organization. So yeah, we went to Sweden last summer with 30 other students from France, Italy, UK and Sweden. And it was really amazing to meet them, to be able to share our thoughts on gender equality and media, and to discuss about our own country's practices. We also had the chance to meet a lot of media professionals who share with us their experiences and their good practices. One of the best part was also that we were able to learn practical skills on mobile journalism. In groups of 3, we had to make a short video on a topic of our choice. And with my team, we decided to focus on the presence of women in Swedish media. I think we can see it.
Can we access from here? We tried.
Yeah, maybe. I think there is the link. And you have to ask.
Slowly.
Sweden is known for being a leader in gender equality. However, we found that web
Esci dalla
media in Sweden
presentazione.
does not always reflect this. Statistics from a prognosis shape created by Max Berggren show that only 35% of people mentioned on the Swedish television website are women. We met with Maria Brandström, a journalist from Swedish television, to discuss this gender gap.
At least in our news team, it has become better, and now we are 50% women and 50% men among the people that we interview. So for us, it's getting better, and I think it can if you work and if you think about these questions like all the time in your news work.
We asked the people of Gothenburg what they think about the representation of women in the Swedish media.
Women is not represented in newspaper. I see that's a big problem because Sweden is used to be equal.
One thing also in media that I've noticed is that every time when a woman does something like a crime or whatever, you always say a woman. Yeah, but when a man like murders someone, it's just like a person.
The men is more represented, and that's also the feeling. Like if the women speak more, they feel like the women is speaking everything.
People just kind of defer to men before they think of women. We say like mankind, it's in the word kind of.
We asked Maria Brandström what are the next steps for Swedish television in terms of progressing gender equality.
I think we have to start by analyzing it. Right now and in the future, we have to focus on the web page and see what kind of news are we having there, what pictures are we publishing, and do our news agenda start to act, because I don't think it should be that big a difference.
So that was just a kind of really impossible thing for you to look at. But maybe you can just say something about the actual process of making that mojo with members of the public, how that felt for you as a kind of group of 3 students rocking up in the middle of Gothenburg, accosting people and saying, can you tell us what you think about gender equality?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we had classes on mobile journalism, which helped a lot because I never learned about mobile journalism, and
No, it's clever.
okay.
There is the video.
There's mixed things going on at the same time. And it's not my machine, so.
Yes. Hurrah.
Yeah, well, it was really nice to work in a group of 3, one from Sweden, one from England, and me, one from France. And what was really interesting about this subject is that, like in France and I think other European countries, we always tend to think that, you know, Sweden and Scandinavian countries are like the best example of gender equality and all, but we thought that even in Sweden, there is still a long way to go for gender equality.
And then we're going to move on to internships.
Yeah, last week I had the chance to do my internship at the International Federation of Journalists with Pamela, and it was really a great opportunity because I was able to help them with their 8th of March campaign. So, for example, I conducted several interviews for the testimonials, and I think it's really important for students and future professionals to have professional experiences to see what can be done to advance gender equality and also how they can be a part of it. So yeah, it was really a great opportunity for me.
So these are just a list of the intern hosts, and the internship, kind of getting the internships organised, were very much Pamela and Eleanor. They're using their contacts. Some of us used our contacts to actually ask these organisations if they'd be willing to host an intern, and these are the organisations that said yes. And some of them, including IFJ, have actually offered more than one internship. And Capaeum was also going to, but that didn't quite work, not for reasons to do with Italy. But I mean, what's brilliant, I think, is the number of media organisations that actually welcome this as an opportunity to actually work with an intern. And I think that the responses that we've had from the interns, I think that Ord would say this as well, have been really positive. So I think as a methodology of actually incorporating, as it were, traditional lecturing processes, as well as actually having that opportunity to work with the media organisation, I think that's really worked for us as part of the project, a really important part of the project. Because part of what we were thinking of when we were developing it was that it would be quite useful for the project, but it's actually been really useful for the students. It's not just, you weren't just well, you were actually guinea pigs, but hopefully you were guinea pigs which actually learnt something really, really useful and meaningful. So that's great for us in terms of how we write it up and how other people might think about a similar kind of project in a different country. This is what Claudia is.
So, and last aspect that we would like to highlight is all the kind of collaboration that we managed to set up that were not really planned from the beginning. So as I said, we were all part of different networks. But as we started creating this project and we realized the good practices, but yes, and also the learning resources, it happened that at the same time a UNESCO promoted UniTwin network for gender media and ICT started to operate. And they are actually working to develop curricula for gender-aware media literacy that was also mentioned widely today. And so we realized that what we were doing could actually be part of the resources that this network could promote. And because it is UNESCO, it operates globally through their regional offices. So there is an ongoing collaboration with them. The other type of collaboration that we unexpectedly were able to set up is with another EU-funded project, which is a project to expand the Erasmus program, so mobility for students, and not only for students, because it's also about employing opportunities and internship. But in this case, it's what they call virtual exchange. So type of exchange and intercultural encounters through the use of technology, which is a concept of using technology for learning that goes well beyond what they call MOOC, so these massive online courses, which are like very unidirectional. In this case, what is created is a space like a classroom for people coming from different contexts, different countries, to debate the same issue. And so they've been using some of the AGEMI material, and we're working to have more of this and actually a consolidated collaboration with them over the next year or so, because this project is also ongoing, and that provides kind of a sense of how we can make the resources that have been created by this project sustainable and actually expand the network. So beyond our own institution and beyond the professional institutions that we've been working with. The Gender Media and ICT is the cover of a booklet that has been produced by the UniTwin UNESCO network that I mentioned. And it's coming up, so that will also be publicly available. And then the last mention of collaboration that we're actually discussing is with Gender Links, which is a very relevant advocacy and policy-oriented organization from Southern Africa, because over the years they've been doing a number of things that may be relevant not only to the AGEMI project, but to enrich, for instance, the collection of interviews and the collection of resources that we have created, and that is certainly in view of making what we've done more global and meaningful. So next steps, quickly, shall I go on? So very quickly, because it's late. We didn't say much about the app, which is also an output of the project. It will be available for Android and iPhone. And the concept of the app is ACT, as assess, challenge, and transform. So one of the functions of the app is that it can be used to do kind of simple monitoring of a piece of news. And so we're providing, it's kind of a monitoring tool whereby there are a few questions as what is the degree of gender fair inclusive language used in this article, and then there is also a little description of what is meant by gender inclusive, so that anybody who is either writing a piece or reading a piece, we can use this with students, could be used by NGOs who are working on gender fair media. They may also use that. And then in the end, you have kind of a ranking on the basis of these resources. The second function is the challenge. So either you see something in this piece of news which is relevant to you and it's well done, or you see something you really don't like and you want to point that to the publisher and the editors. And so we provide guidelines on how to write to the editor to let them know that you like or do not like what you see. And then the transform is actually a call for collaborative action. So how can we learn from the transformative actions that other people have contributed? So these should be available in the next couple of weeks. And of course, on the platform, you will have a piece of news, but it will also be available as the AGEMI app on different stores. A few things that we are expected to do, because that's part of the project, is to produce an how-to guide, how to use this kind of resources, an evaluation plan, which is also going to be about how can we make this sustainable. And of course, any sort of collaboration, both those that we have created already, but future collaboration could be very meaningful. So depending on who is, as an institution, as European institution, as other universities or professional organization and unions, if you see anything interesting in this, we're certainly happy to discuss how we could maybe join forces and organize something. We'll be working to enrich and fill in the resources bank. So of course the Google form is there. And we are to strengthen this collaboration, of course, transnationally, but also at the national level. So I can give an example of how we are planning on using some of this in a discussion at the national level in Italy, where, of course, there's a lot of need for this. And so collaborating with Elena from Rome, with other organizations like Osservatorio di Pavia, and with the professional journalists and their association, we're organizing in June an event in Milano, where this will be presented, and it will be, of course, open to the discussion with a number of other professionals and journalists.
Keep talking, Claudia.
So we've said this already. You can help, and we would like very much you to do so, to do with your organization, with your individual expertise. So the Google form is there, and you can easily access from the platform. If you go to the space, that's the resource bank. If your organization is involved in these kind of activities, and of course we may not have met you before, so very nice if you can contact us to the AGEMI email address or any of our addresses and just point us to your organization. We'd be happy to create that and include that in the map. Any other organization that you know that you think should be in there. And then, of course, if you are an educator or you want to organize something like training for your own organization, all the learning resources are openly available and accessible. But we're also happy to maybe discuss if anything targeted, if anything can be adjusted to specific needs or point you to other existing resources. And most of all, in this very few minutes that we may have in question and answer, if you do see any potential for collaboration, or if you have questions, of course, or if you want to make suggestion on how to move from AGEMI as a project to AGEMI as a community, we would very much welcome that.
Last slide.
As we said, maybe one point that we can mention is most of what we heard in terms of the projects that have provided knowledge and information on what are the situation of gender unequal media across Europe, those were at the basis of what we started to think when we were designing this project. And so it's meant to be about education. It's meant to be about transforming cultural attitudes. It's meant to support those kind of initiatives that address and tackle the specific causes, which may not be as visible, like when you have indicators and then you count how many women, how many men. But the causes that we have understood are like underlying persisting inequalities. So changing the organizational culture, making people who are in decision-making position more aware of what they could do. Why is it so important to have codes of conduct, and how that is not enough, because you also need to have some kind of support tools, monitoring. So all of that is somehow embedded in the AGEMI, and we think that this is also important in view of what's coming up next year. So next year is 2020. That will be 25 years after Beijing, and as we know, every time there is a Beijing Plus celebration, all these issues are back again on the agenda. So we're hoping that some of what is in the AGEMI and some of the outcomes that may derive from expanding the AGEMI community may also inform not only the public but the policy debate in looking at the Beijing Plus 25 agenda. So, merci.
Okay.
We're running a little bit late, but I suggest that we hear from our last two speakers and then take questions, because then there's going to be drinks and snacks at the end, and that's your reward for sticking with us for the whole afternoon.
Hi everyone. We're just moving to the last session, and I know it's been a long day. Apologies for that. We had so much to tell about this project, but we wanted to end this day of discussion, or this afternoon of discussion, by talking about Belgium and talking about what's happening in Belgium. And I don't know if you had a look at the map earlier on, where you had the different points, different spots all around the world, and you saw a huge spot. Did you notice the huge spot for Belgium? It's because many people here, many organizations here have contributed to the resources bank and have proposed some new resources. And also, we had here lots of organizations that have hosted interns. So to close this session, I have two representatives of these fabulous organizations that have been helping us. One of them is Safia Kessas. She's a journalist. She's the head of diversity of RTBF, and RTBF has been one of the hosts. She has been hosted one of the AGEMI intern. And our other speaker is Martine Simoni. She's a long-time women defender here in Belgium and women in the news, and she's done a lot for gender equality in the media. I think both of these speakers have been actually very heavily involved in this field. And Martine is the head of the Association des journalistes professionnels. So we're going to start with Safia. Safia will explain a little bit all the work that is being done at the RTBF. For those of you who know what the RTBF is, it's the Belgian Public Service television and radio, and it has done quite a bit recently to improve gender equality in the media, in their structures, in their content. Safia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm going to speak in English. So I'm going to apologize because it's not very easy for me. So and I'm a woman, so I have to apologize. So ever since we started 3 years ago, RTBF takes a series of action to make its contents more inclusive, and so we continue to focus on equality and better representation of female, especially in the role of expert. So RTBF has set a strategy which declined itself mainly in 3 times: monitoring, trainings, and assistance and partnerships with civil society. So let's begin with the monitoring. Approaching topics such as gender equality or underrepresentation of women in our contents can raise a lot of emotional reactions in the newsrooms. So it becomes really necessary to work to objectify data in order to go beyond the basic discussions often used as a defensive mechanism by our peers and men colleagues. So journalism remains an environment dominated by men, as confirmed by the last report of the Association of Professional Journalists in Belgium, which states that sexism is still part of our newsroom. La Ligue du LOL, latest scandal, is another recent example of this terrible flag. So an important task that we're facing is our diversity equality monitoring. It allows us to see how much women are underrepresented as experts and how they are overrepresented, for instance, in entertainment programs. So only 37% of the people that take a part of the television information programs are women. These are the general figures, but if one takes a closer approach, 71% of spokespersons and 78% of the experts appearing on television are men. You know the data. So to sum it up, men are analysts, whereas women represent the vox populi. So considering studies done in other countries, we noticed that more frequent countings in terms of speaking time and women representation tended to ameliorate those numbers. So therefore, RTBF decided to switch from an annual to a quarterly monitoring. So we are the only media to do it in Belgium. So presentation of the monitoring to different level of the company joined with thought to give meaning to the numbers from top to teams. And for instance, we can show the monitoring and then show a video like that. So it's not translated, but I think you can understand.
Escape. Ça marche pas quand tu fais escape. C'est celle-ci. Oui, c'est celle-là.
Agressive. C'est un adjectif qu'on donne très souvent aux femmes qui s'affirment. Parce qu'encore de nos jours, notre idée de ce que doit être une femme, c'est doux et docile. Une femme, ça doit être effacée, surtout sur le marché du travail. Par exemple, le magazine Fortune a analysé près de 250 évaluations professionnelles dans plusieurs compagnies en technologie. Et ce qu'ils ont observé, c'est que 59% des hommes recevaient du feedback négatif contre 88% des femmes. Ce qu'on observe, c'est que contrairement aux hommes, les femmes se font critiquer sur leur personnalité et leur voix. Est-ce qu'on dit de surveiller leur ton lorsqu'elles parlent? On leur dit qu'elles sont émotives, difficiles et bien sûr agressives.
So, like in our newsroom, women are viewed as more emotional, but if they assert themselves, men consider them as an aggressive person. So the data need really to be efficient, to be accompanied with training. So the reason why women are underrepresented in our media is closely related to our perception of the world. So-called rational choices we make are in fact mentored by stereotypes, as you know it. So looking for speakers, asking questions before covering news will make content more qualitative and more fair to women. So we work as automatic pilots under stress. This is why we wanted to offer the possibility to our teams to gain more insight in terms of unconscious bias. And this training is especially aimed to at producers, newsroom, and sports, because we all have unconscious bias, even journalists. So, as I just mentioned before, sexism is a fact in the newsroom, but on top of that, women are being harassed online. So racialized journalists suffer from another form of violence. Racism and sexism are often closely related. So last year, one of our weather forecast anchors, Cecile Junga, was the victim of racist attacks online and off. This was, of course, revolting and called for reaction, but it was also a crucial test to see how we were responding to such non-acceptable reaction at RTBF. So it was also coming at the time that we were developing tools now to face racism and coach RTBF staff on the subject. So this year there will be different sessions planned, articulated in two parts: coaching and experiences sharing. The goal are to strengthen the arguments against racism and sexism, but also to free speech on related experiences, sometimes internalized. Media also sometimes deal thematics such as gender equality in an inappropriate way. Violence against women is relegated in short articles and to back pages. So the reasons invoked by the authors to justify their violent behavior are mentioned as such in the analyzed articles, and the journalist does not stress that such reasons are not legitimate motives for hurting or killing a woman. So again, RTBF is the only Belgian French media that publicly promised to adopt a recommendation of the Association of Professional Journalists about gender equality, as Martin Simonis will explain just after. So we are struggling again words such as passionate crime to describe what is a murder, a feminicide, treated as a society fact and not only as a short news. So it's very important for us. Fight against sexism also show women faces in a role of experts to show them under another light and be a role model for girls' careers. So in that aspect, we are continuing the partnership with again the Association of Journalists and Expertalia, which is an experts database. So RTBF organized 3 coaching sessions a year. About 80% from diversity have been media coached, both on radio speaking skills and on television appearances. Experts were coming from NGOs, academical or economical world. And in addition of that, there's a creation of our journalist expert network. So 2 times a year at RTBF, this network will help to overcome the fear some journalists feel toward a risk-taking move that would represent the fact to have someone that you don't know talking about certain subject. So the goal of those meetings is to fight fears by dialogue and to make new mobile numbers, those of the women expert in journalist phones, and it works. So on the 8th of March also we will launch a new digital information project. The goals are to highlight women experts profile or work on subjects also that aren't headlines or even not taken into account in mainstream medias. So, and also to talk about invisible occupations. La deuxième petite vidéo. Invisible. Ça marche pas? Ah, c'est bon. Non, c'est pas celle-là.
No, it's the other one.
So, yeah, it was funny because when they designed it at the first time, it was a man who designed it. It was they were all like blonde and thin. So, so we're to conclude, RTBF intends to pursue its actions by building a diversity equality plan in the coming years. And also, now we are really conscious that there is no natural process to make figures and representation change. Without protocols, there is no change in the future. So that's it, and it's the end. Thank you, and sorry, I had to read it because I don't feel comfortable in English, so sorry.
Thank you very much, Safia, and we're very much looking forward to watch this new program. And with such a name, it's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. And we're moving on now to Martin. It's interesting because we're all native French speakers speaking English, as you can notice. Now it's Martin Simonis. I guess your presentation, c'est Women and the Media, right?
Yes. No, c'est pas ça. Ah, si, pardon. Yes, it is, Pamela. Thank you. So be courageous and stay with us. This is the last time, the last speech for today. So my name is Martin Simonis. I'm General Secretary of the Belgian Union of Journalists. You can go to the next slide, please. So Belgian Union of Journalists has two entities. One is Flemish Dutch, as the VVJ, and I will speak about what we do in French and German speaking part of the union, which is AGP. And AGP represents 2,500 professional journalists in Belgium. We provide a lot of services to our members: official press card, professional and legal advice, legal assistance, trade union work, of course, but also for freelancers, training, financial support for quality journalism, media literacy, ethics, lobby on press freedom, and so on and so on. So everything which can be interesting for our members who are professional journalists. And since 2010, we work on equality and diversity, so almost 10 years now. Yes, thank you. We have provided a lot of research and study on media content. I will go very quick on it because you know the reality. It was not only about men and women, but broader about diversity. The first study was the global media monitoring in 2010, and in 2011 we decided to analyze the content of the daily press, because there are a lot of studies on the broadcast on television, but there were nothing on written press. So we decided to work on it under the scope of diversity. So not only men and women, but also ethnical and social origin, age, profession, and so on. We participate in a global media monitoring project once again in 2015. And we had a new barometer in 2014. This means for content study to analyze how media cover this question. And we are now preparing a new barometer. It will be published in a few weeks or months. I laugh because one of the authors of the barometer is there, and it's Sabri. So maybe he can tell you. It's a huge work, but well, it's coming. And last year, yes, you can go to the next. Thank you. Last year we have organized and published a 5th study on content, how media covers the violence against women. And this was not made with a university. I'm sorry. This was made with the university, and which is interesting, a lot of women or feminist associations. And this was a very interesting work, and certainly with this feminist association, because it has given us the possibility to publish some recommendation for journalists when they have to speak about violence against women. If you are interested in, it's very late, so I don't go deep in the recommendation we wrote for the journalists. There are some flyers there on the table, and you can read it. And last two studies we have done, yeah. But this time it's no more on the coverage of media, it's on the profession of journalism. In 2013 we had a university study on diversity in the profession. How is the profession of journalism diverse or not? Not at all. And of course it was made with a university, and in 2018, I mean last year, we had a new study on women in the profession. So, and this is a very big and rich study. There are so many interesting to read on it. A few conclusions of these 7 studies and what we have done after that, because you can go on having studies. If nothing happens, well, change of job. First, the studies on media coverage. When you open a newspaper in Belgium, you see less than 20% women in it. So it's very bad. Of course, the underrepresentation of women is unacceptable. Women are especially invisible in sport, politics, economics, finance, what we call the hard news. Women mostly occupy supporting roles, and nearly 9 experts out of 10 interviewed are men. Women are nonetheless equally represented until the age of 20, then they disappear from the news. Women are less identified than men, and so on and so on. You can read all of this disparate conclusion in our studies. Our answer of all of these conclusion was, of course, you can go on having studies, but maybe we should do something else. And we decided to give journalists a tool. The idea was to provide a pragmatic answer to the usual saying, there are no experts women. So, of course, there are. And now you're a journalist and you can find them because they are there. And this is called Expertalia. It's a database which identified and present expert women, but also expert men if they are from diverse origins, because the problem is the same for them. They are invisible. Expertalia wants to respond to the deficits and shortcomings observed in women's presence and people from a variety of backgrounds. The chosen axis is expertise. The idea is to offer journalists a tool to facilitate the diversification of sources that favors equality and diversity. For the moment, we have 400 experts in Expertalia. It was launched 2 years ago, so I mean we slowly, but we are growing. And 300 Belgian journalists are using Expertalia. Of course, it's not enough. The idea was that all our members should use this, but that's not the case. So the experts are from 3 groups: academic, professional, and associative. And when you are logged on Expertalia, you have access to the personal information of the expert, the CV, the photos, the videos, the publication. For example, if you have a research on the keyword gender, you will find, yes, you will find Pamela, for instance. And a lot of other ones. This was only the first page, but you can also have I don't know, a research on a physical, or it's not only about gender, it's about all the expertise you want to find in a society. With Expertalia, we have, and as Safia told you, we have a partnership with the public broadcast RTBF to provide to the expert media coaching. The idea is to help women to take the floor on television or on the radio. And the idea is also, after this media coaching, to have to make a video presentation of the expert. And the video is available on Expertalia. That means when a journalist is looking for an expert, he can see how she is, how she looks, how she speaks, and say, okay, it's all right, because usually it's all right. And you also can find the video on the YouTube channel. I'm very happy with this partnership, because it helps to visibilize the experts. And they, for the first time, they come into a television and they sit down with a micro, and they try to express themselves. And at the end of the day, well, it's finished, it's all right. They know it, they can do it. They don't dare, they dare, and then they... okay, I think it's very helpful, and it's a very good partnership between RTBF and AGEMI. So, at the end, why do we do this? For us, as Union of Journalists, it's a question of quality of journalism. Because if more than the half of population, I mean the women, are bad or not represented in the news, what is the value of this news? So the idea is to help with to help journalists to improve the quality. And as it is an initiative of their own professional union, we have a kind of legitimacy to do this. It's easier for journalists to hear something from their union than hearing it from NGO or from politics, so the legitimacy is very important. And it's also built upon recent media analysis based on indisputable methodology. There is rationality. It's not only I think, or it's not only intuition. These are figures. We also try to avoid the value judgment, aiming for quality, diversified sources, angles. That's professionalism. If you speak to a journalist about professionalism, he will listen to. And the aim is to make media and journalists allies in the fight for equality and parity. Now, we also had two other studies now on the professional, and we say a few words on them. About women in the newsroom, women in the profession. In Belgium, and it's not like that in all European countries, but in Belgium we only have 35% of women in the profession. We see at all the age that women journalists are more educated than men. They, of course, are underrepresented in the middle management, and there is also, and we can put now figures on this, an important salary gap. The average income of men is 16% higher than average income of women in the profession. The career of the women journalist is shorter than the career of the men journalist, and respondents are less likely to have children 63% of women journalists, again 80% of men. Women face a lot of obstacles in their career. Of course, men face obstacles too, but there are some difference, and that was the idea of this study, is to see if some obstacles were different for women and if they were gender related. We have a big difficulty for women is to lead a parental life and work as a journalist. Journalism is a time-consuming job and involves more radical life choices between private and professional for women. The rigid working conditions prevent a balanced private-professional lifestyle. Sexism in the newsroom is significant and pregnant, much more than we thought. This study shows it, and at a very well, for us it was not a surprise, but on that point it was. And then moral and sexual harassment in the media, it's much more against women than men. And just maybe a few examples from the survey. You can go to the next. When we ask men and women journalists, have you ever been victim of harassment, moral or sexual, and or aggression inside the newsroom? For sexual harassment, women say yes at 11%. The men, they don't say yes, they say no. And for moral harassment, women say yes at 41%. And men 25%. Even 25%, it's a lot, but 41%, it's. And then the next question was very interesting. Have you ever witnessed harassment, moral or sexual, and or aggression inside the newsroom? Witness of sexual harassment, women say yes at 14%, and men at 7%. And moral harassment, women say yes, I've witnessed it at 42%, men at 30%. This is interesting because they are in the same newsroom, but they don't seem to see the same things. And that's something very interesting for what we are doing with this. One thing the study shows is the reason why women journalists leave the profession, because we know that they leave the profession near the age of 35. And we try to understand why. We had a lot of reasons. These are the main reasons. Job insecurity, that's the first reason. Mental load. Lack of valorization, absence of managerial policies, generalized denial and cynicism from management, sexism, paternalism, harassment, and this all has as consequences that women go in themselves, they use the silence, they get illness, abnormal stress, professional and moral burnout. So it's not so funny being a women journalist in Belgium. Did you see this? No, what can we do with all of this? Maybe going back home and cry or do something. The idea is to do something with this. And we are going to organize a campaign in the next 2 years for women journalists. And the campaign will be based on the request of the women journalists, also the men journalists, because we are going to work on both groups. The idea is first to organize women in the newsroom. to provide them with training in negotiation, fighting sexism, to organize solidarity and mentoring for young journalists, because that's something they ask, and something that the older journalists say. When I began to work, I did not find any solidarity. It was difficult to have contact in the profession, and we also have a special target is the students. And each time the School of Journalists invite us to speak on these topics, of course we go and speak on it, and certainly to young women journalists or student journalists. But it's not enough working on the group of professionals. We also have to work to target the employers. The idea is to stop the denial of sexism, which is very pregnant. There is no sexism in this profession. What are you talking about? So, and even if they are honest, they say, yes, but it's not so. It's not such a big problem, but it is. The idea is that equality also become a value for media companies. The idea is to get transparency of wage, which will be difficult, and then to organize with some employer policy on reconciliation of work and family life, because that's a very big problem for women journalists, but for men journalists too. So I think there is still a long way to get equality on the media sector, but I have hope because, well, I'm General Secretary since more than 25 years, but I know we will get equality before I get retired, because 20 years ago that was a non-subject. Now it's on the agenda. And 20 years ago, when I was speaking about sexism in the newsroom, everybody was laughing on it. Now it's a real subject, and we have studies that show that there is sexism and still inequality. And a lot of initiative, as you have seen, on these topics. And I think AGEMI comes at the right moment. Thank you for this initiative. I think it's very interesting seeing all of these things happening in all the country. I would also add at the end that all the work we have done in Belgium on this topic, equality, diversity, was possible because we got financial support from a direction of equal opportunities. Otherwise, it would not have been possible for a union of journalists to do such a great, I say great because, well, to do such a job. But that's why, as we got some financial support, and it will go on for the next 3 years, we could do this. So I hope equality, it's not for tomorrow, but it will coming. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would like to say that this study is one of the first studies that exists in Europe that is so detailed and that provides so much information on the situation of women journalists. And I really hope that it will also serve as a basis for that other countries will follow. And I would also encourage all of you to, if you're based in Belgium, to register on Expertalia, because I'm sure you have an expertise to share. And if you're not in Belgium, there are similar initiatives happening in many countries, because many media have understood the importance to have such expert data. So I would strongly encourage you to be part of it, because, and actually it works, and they call me sometimes, but not on gender, but they call me, and I think it works, and I think if we want to make a change, we have to take our own responsibility, and I think our responsibility is to be on this kind of expert data and provide our expertise. I don't know if you want to say a final word. Maybe we could take a couple of questions, like, yes? You.
Thank you so much for delivering such a nice presentation. I'm here a student and you at ULB. And my question is about, is it possible, what problems did I face when I wrote stories on things like this, is using gender as a storyteller, because when you write from your perspective or you deliver a talk, I'm now trying to avoid saying she, me in different languages. Let's say in German, for example, and in French we have il or ich. Yes, right. And also in other languages, whereas in English we don't have this, it's just pure thing. And now in Germany, in some PR or some materials, they use slash, like Journalistinnen, zum Beispiel, or also in different, I saw this mostly in German actually, information sources, when they have slash and they add Rienin. And I'm wondering if this is the way that might actually promote or support the idea of gender equality, or this captures attention and is not the way, because I haven't seen this in French press, for example. And for me personally, as I'm from Russia and we have also we have changes in the end, I'm now trying to avoid the ending and using passive forms, for example, or neutral, and not to attract attention, just to focus on the subject. And now I'm confused if this is the right path and we really want to avoid, or is it vice versa? We want to let's say, postulate that, well, we are talking about subject, right? But it's equality, and that's okay to say, like, really in the very end. So would you please comment on this? And also in broadcasting, right? Will the ending in the end change the perception of the subject, making this more serious, or less serious? Yeah, this is the question. Thank you.
So you.
Are you okay? Je peux répondre un peu. Je serais plus à l'aise en français. Oui. You speak French?
Je parle un peu.
Tout le monde parle français dans la salle? Ouais, super. Alors, je vais pouvoir y aller. Bon, on peut terminer comme ça, mais en fait, tout dépend. Tout dépend l'agenda. Bah, en fait, si en fait, tu parles d'écriture inclusive, tout simplement. Moi, je suis venue avec cette proposition parmi d'autres dans le cadre du plan égalité qu'on va lancer dans mon entreprise. Et bon, on m'a dit non. Mais de l'autre côté, quand j'écris dans mon entreprise des mails, je les écris en écriture inclusive, comme beaucoup d'autres collègues. Et donc, je pense que progressivement, on va y arriver. Et je pense que ça n'enlève rien à la dimension analytique ou sérieuse du sujet. Au contraire, ça permet d'ouvrir les imaginaires. Et donc, mais je pense que c'est trop tôt en Belgique. Enfin, en tout cas, dans mon média, je pense que c'est trop tôt. Quand on voit tous les problèmes qu'on rencontre dans les rédactions, il faut essayer d'avancer petit à petit. Mais moi, je considère que c'est un élément qualitatif que j'ajoute dans mes chroniques, dans mes billets. J'essaye d'écrire de façon neutre, pas vraiment de façon inclusive, pour pas choquer... mais en tout cas, de façon neutre, je pense que ça a un impact. Mais je dirais que, pour moi, ce qui est le plus important encore, aujourd'hui, dans les priorités, mais bon, voilà, qui suis-je pour dire où sont les priorités, c'est d'avoir une grille genre sur tous les sujets d'information. Ça, pour moi, c'est le plus important. Et ça rendrait les sujets, en tout cas de mes collègues masculins qui n'y pensent pas, plus sérieux. Tu as compris? Plus ou moins, ou bien... So
So I think what Safia wants to say is the language is one thing, but and it's important. The other thing is to have a gender approach on each subject. For instance, you make a subject as journalist on pensions, retirement pension. If you don't take a gender approach, you miss something, because it's so different for men and women. J'ai pris ton exemple des pensions. It's very different for men and women, and usually we hear, well, the age of retirement is, and they forget that for the women the career was so different, and it was stopped by children, blah blah blah. You know, so if you don't have this gender approach when you take a subject and you have to speak about a subject as journalist, you miss half of the population. And that's maybe more important. Well, I don't know, it's not a priority, but certainly as much important than having an inclusive language. And for some languages it's much more, for me everything is important. You have to do everything if you have time, it's all right. But with some languages it's much more easier than with others. French, it's not easy to be inclusive. I mean, someone who writes a book is an auteur, and so, and if it's a woman, a lot of them said auteure with a e at the end, and but now there is a newspaper in Belgium who decided to say autrice. Because auteure, you don't hear that it is a woman. Autrice, you hear it. Well, we have acteur, an actor, actrice exists in French from years and years, so why not autrice? But I mean, this language, French, it's not easy to be inclusive. I think other languages are easier than French. And in France, you have the AGEMI, which is a kind of group of old white men saying that you will not change anything at my language. This is my language. Don't touch it.
Merci Martine. Je crois qu'on n'a plus beaucoup de temps, donc on va devoir. We have to stop because we wanted to. Yeah, maybe one last question, but then we need to close because we wanted to have a drink and we can continue this conversation around drinks. Does anyone have a last question to ask? No? Okay. So I would like to thank you very much. Would you, Karen, would you like to say something? I would like to thank very much the speakers and to open the debate also to something that is very concrete and that I think can really make a difference how we talk about women and men in the news. Karen?
So let's just thank our two speakers. I mean, I just wanted to just say thank you for just sticking around until now. We know that it's gone over a little bit, but as I said, the reward is snacks and drinks at the end. I mean, I would really encourage you to go on the platform, have a... Oh, God, I've been blinded. Have a look at the platform, see what's on there, and keep checking back, because over the next couple of months, certainly until the end of the project, we will be adding more things, adding more learning resources, adding more good practices. And we're hoping that you, the community, will also be adding things, so emailing us saying, oh, I really like this, or this link broke, or giving us some feedback, because we're in that process. We're in the process of development. And the more that we get your thoughts as people in the community who are going to, you are our target. We want you to be using those resources. So anything that you see that you think, oh, I heard this really good practice about something, just email us. Just tell us about those things. As I said, because everyone, I think pretty much everyone in the room has got to hear through the Eventbrite site, we'll use that as a list to sort of send you stuff, because we now have you. We know where you live. Well, we don't know where you live, but we know who you are. Can I also urge you, please, to just spend 5 minutes with your drink, filling in the questionnaire. That would just be really helpful. I hope that you've enjoyed and learnt something from this afternoon. It's been great that, you know, to have your questions, to have your attendance, and thank you and goodbye. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to my colleagues as well.